Hello, and we are doing a Final Destination Bloodlines full breakdown. Final Destination Bloodline is the sixth installment in the wildly popular Final Destination horror franchise, which kicked off all the way back in 2000. The newest film brings the series full circle by explaining how Death's ultimate design started and tries to explain why all those other people received their own premonitions and battles for survival. Now, we don't learn what the entity is that keeps warning our main characters. We have our own theories about that, but all in all, things seem to finally be wrapped up, closing the chapter on the decades-long war with death, but still leaving the door open for future films. The film starts off with a premonition, this time set all the way back in the 1960s. Young Iris is being taken on a special date by her boyfriend, and they are going to the newest, fanciest restaurant in the city, high atop a tower that resembles the Needle in Seattle. At first, Iris is a bit unsure, as the other patrons seem to be from upper crust parts of the society, but her boyfriend assures her she looks like $1,000,000. Riding the elevator to the top, Iris takes in all the structural design, a bit fearful as much as it's made out of glass. Throw in an obnoxious little boy who keeps screwing with her, and she chokes down on her own panic. Once they reach the top, they take in the beautifully constructed restaurant, complete with a 360-degree view of the city and a glass dance floor populated by several other young couples. However, they are turned away almost immediately by a super rude maitre d', and while her boyfriend tries his best to convince him to let them still have their own table, they manage to sneak their way to the bar while he is distracted. After a few moments, they walk out onto the viewing deck, where the true purpose of the night reveals itself. Her boyfriend wants to propose. Before accepting, she tells him that she's pregnant, but that only encourages him further, and she giddily accepts his proposal. This moment is almost immediately ruined once again by the same brat, this time from him tossing pennies off the top of the tower onto unsuspected people below. Highly dangerous, that is. This is where it all goes downhill. One of the pennies gets blown back by the wind, gets sucked up by the air duct system and jams up the fan. Meanwhile, inside, the music is bumping and the dancers are stomping around. So much so that a piece of the overhead chandelier breaks off and hits the glass floor, cracking it. As more and more people gather to shake their booties, the crack of course grows larger. Now, it's a little incredulous that no one seems to notice this. I mean, while most people who dance are usually confident and only stare at their partner, I personally tend to look down at my feet from time to time to make sure I am not about to step on anyone or get stepped on. So out of the 100+ people there, not a single one looked down to see this gigantic crack forming. Including a moment when the band is playing Shout, and they get to the part where everyone is crouching down real low on their hunches, miming a little bit softer now, a little bit softer now. But I digress. The inevitable does happen, and bam, the glass breaks, causing several people to begin falling. Panic of course ensues. One woman runs headlong into one of the soul chefs lighting a flambe, setting herself on fire, which then she runs around like a crazed chicken. And remember the penny in the vent? Well, gas is now being pumped into the room instead of being ventilated. And so, boom, a big burst of flames erupt, and now it's all burning. More people fall to their deaths, more explosions. The mother of the young boy burns alive right in front of his eyes as he hides in a cabinet, and Iris watches helplessly as her fiancé plummets back down to street level. There's also a pretty gnarly scene where a woman loses her grip as half of the restaurant begins to break off and slant, and she smacks into the glass, breaking her leg in 2 places. Also, an applause-worthy death occurs when the room maitre d' tries to get on the elevator that's already over capacity and gets both sliced in half and crushed when it falls. Screw that guy though. After pretty much everyone has either fallen or burnt to a crisp, Iris spots the little boy and tries to save him. An explosion goes off, sending them over the edge, but wait, that engagement ring on her finger saves her by getting lodged between some nails. Yeah, it's a bit unbelievable, but whatever. Let's go with it. It doesn't save her for long, as the weight of her and the boy basically degloves her, and then she falls and falls. And oh no, a big spiky rod. And suddenly we cut to present day in a classroom on some college campus where Stephanie wakes up screaming at the top of her lungs. Stephanie has been having the same nightmare over and over for weeks now. And it's been affecting her life to the point she's afraid to go to sleep. And it's basically flunking out of school. She makes the connection that the woman in the dream shares the same name as her estranged grandmother Iris, so naturally it's time to get some answers, and she decides with some encouragement from her roommate to go home and find out what she can about her. When Stephanie arrives home, her father is thrilled, but their family dynamic is a bit off. Turns out her mother just up and left some years prior, and the family hasn't really recovered from that. And because Stephanie has also kind of moved away and become absent, she's kind of treated like a stranger, especially by her younger brother. Now, they get over it pretty quickly, summoning some of that sibling magic, and the two go off to go visit her cousins. Stephanie hoping to get the address to Iris's house, so she can ask some real questions. This is when we meet the rest of the cast of the film. There's Uncle Howard and Aunt Brenda, your typical white American suburban couple, drinking Miller High Life and barbecuing in the background. Then there's Eric, the older son, a dark, brooding, I grew up listening to My Chemical Romance and that's my whole life kind of guy. Complete with all the cliche piercings and tattoos. I love My Chemical Romance. Next up is Bobby, a dimwit but with a heart of gold, whose best friend is a little turtle named Paco. And finally, Julia, a self-obsessed blonde bitch who treats Stephanie as if she's beneath her. Stephanie tries to ask her uncle for Iris's address, but he deflects, telling her to stay away from their grandmother, as she is batshit crazy and no good. But of course, Aunt Brenda has a sweet spot for Stephanie and gives up the goods. Cut to Stephanie playing old Grammy a visit is probably one of the weirdest and most out of places scenes in the entire film. Picture this, deep in the mountain woods of some old forgotten Rome is a cabin that is surrounded by giant spiky logs and barbed wire and a heavy metal gate and floodlights and barrels of oil and so much more. It's like she's expecting Rambo or something to come for her, or any army of invaders from a neighbouring kingdom. At first, Iris doesn't want to let her in, but when Stephanie reveals she's her granddaughter, Iris eagerly brings her into the house. Now personally, I don't see how this place has been death-proofed, but whatever. According to Iris and the film, this place is the safest place on Earth. After making sure Stephanie isn't a danger to her, the two sit and talk, and it's basically just a big old exposition dump. If you've seen the other films in the franchise, then you already know the whole spiel about Death's design and all that. The only difference here is Iris has a giant notebook filled with every single event from all the films and then some, cataloguing everything, including all possible future ways for anyone to die. Basically, she's the one next in line, and the reason her entire family is still safe is because she is still alive. But here's the kicker, she's got cancer, and death is gonna get her anyway. She tries to convince Stephanie of what she needs to do to move in so she can be kept safe and all that. And Stephanie's like, no way, and tries to get the hell out of there. So to prove to her that it is real, Iris makes the ultimate sacrifice. Not even 2 minutes of stepping outside the cabin, she is impaled by the weather vane right in front of Stephanie, covering her in blood. The family holds a funeral and then have a celebration barbecue at Uncle Howard's house. Yeah, they really didn't like Iris. For those of you who have seen the trailer, you know what's coming, but I'll break it down for you anyway. The Rube Goldberg machine goes into full effect here. First, Bobby breaks a glass accidentally, which drops a shard into the ice bucket. Julia scoops up ice into several glasses, including the shard of glass into one of the cups, and begins mixing drinks. Meanwhile, Eric turns on the gas on the grill and just walks away. And then Bobby, like the big kid he is, begins jumping around on the trampoline. Mind you, he's like 6 foot and a decent weight. And this trampoline is very old, so it begins to tear with each bounce. Underneath the trampoline is a metal rake, with the prongs turned upwards. Estranged mom, Darlene, turns up with cookies, where we learn that Bobby is allergic to nuts, which will come up again later in the film. Anyway, so when Eric tries to light the grill, it lights a big old fire right in his face, but luckily no one is hurt. Yet. A beer bottle falls, turning on a hose, which begins to fill with water, winding itself, knocking over some garden tools, which starts up the electric lawnmower. Julia almost chokes on a fly in a drink and pours it out onto the lawn, which is also contained the shard of glass. It's time for Harold to grill, so he walks across the grass, steps on the shard of glass and falls over, but before he can get back up to tell everyone he's okay, the lawnmower decides to start doing some lawn maintenance on its own and drives itself right over Harold's face. And that was the end of Uncle Harold. Wow. The beginning funeral number 2. This being funeral number 2, in such a short time span, Stephanie really falls down the rabbit hole into full-on belief of everything Iris tried to tell her, and she puts together this crazy conspiracy board, where it all connects. She then tries to convince her family of it, and while her brother kind of believes her, the rest of the family tell her she's basically crazy and to get lost. So naturally, Stephanie does the opposite and begins obsessing on how she can save them, all from their fates. Cut to Eric at the tattoo parlour, also a scene shown in the trailer. So if you know, you know. But there's a twist, so Eric is cleaning up the end of his shift, and once again, through the machinations of death, a series of small happenings eventually lead to his nose ring getting hooked to a chain which is being pulled into the ceiling fan, while the cleaning fluid he was using catches on fire. Whilst most normal people would just grab the chain and yank the shitty fan out of the ceiling, Eric does the least smart thing by climbing up onto the furniture, balancing on a stool with wheels and on a glass display case, trying to unhook himself. When it all goes to shit, as it always does in these films, he is flung forwards into the flame as the entire shop burns. The next morning, Stephanie is panicking because she hasn't heard from Eric and decides to head to her house to see what's up. Guess what? He's perfectly fine. Aside from a small burn mark on his arm, he's no worse for wear. One lucky bastard. Stephanie tries to convince him to try and be more careful, even pointing out a scenario where a tree saw could fall, hitting a leaf blower guy who blows leaves into some boy's face while they are kicking a football around, causing them to get startled and kick the ball into Eric's face and possibly killing him. Eric brushes it off and even tempts fate by walking backwards into the street, where he is nearly smashed by a truck that races past. So many close calls, this guy either isn't next or he's somehow unbelievably lucky, right? Cue Julia leaving the house to go on a run, when the exact scenario that Stephanie describes happens to her. She is hit in the face with a soccer ball, and get this, it hits her hard enough that she somehow, flips into the garbage can that is being picked up by the garbage truck. Let's be real, in any normal situation that ball would hit you. You might get knocked off balance and fall against the garbage can, but you wouldn't flip into upside down like some cartoon character. especially if the garbage can is pretty much the same height as you. But this is Final Destination after all. Stephanie witnesses this along with her brother Eric, and they try to run to her rescue. The truck driver has his headphones on full volume so he doesn't hear shit. And wouldn't you know it, the garbage compactor is on, and Julia is about to get a thinner a lot quicker. Instead of hitting the emergency stop button, or the driver looking in his rear view to even watch what he was doing in the first place, Julia is squashed in probably one of the most ridiculous looking effects in the film. It really looks uncanny, like the robot doll girl Megan. Like they used some kind of rubber mannequin and did some kind of AI overlay of Julia's face on it. It's still pretty gruesome though. So this finally convinces the family to sit together and talk about this whole death's design thing. And here's the big twist. Was Eric truly the luckiest sob in the world? Well, sort of. Turns out before Brenda met Harold, Brenda was hitting the sheets with Jerry Fenbury. And so Eric isn't actually related to Iris's side of the family at all, making him not a target. So that means Bobby is actually the one who's next on the chopping block. Remember, the only people who are affected by this curse are either the people Iris saved or the descendants, as they should never have actually existed. The other people aren't affected at all, like Brenda and Stephanie's dad Marty. Anyway, so Stephanie, having read through the journal that Iris gave her, notes that Iris mentioned a man named JB, and that he knew of someone who survived. Road trip, anyone? Heading to Clear Rivers, Hope Rivers Hospital, we run into everyone's favourite coroner, Mr. William John Bloodworth. JB for short. Turns out the little boy in the premonition was him. And because Iris got all those people out before the disaster happened, he was spared as well. But alas, he too has cancer and won't be alive for much longer, sadly mirroring real life events. Here's a question. How many of you have seen Final Destination 2? Well, if not, major spoilers are incoming. At the end of Final Destination 2, Kimberly and Thomas managed to not only survive, but to completely break the death's curse, basically by dying and being revived. Kimberly drowns at the end of the film, being dead for about 3 to 5 minutes before being resuscitated, which plays into the whole new life thing that Bloodworth tried telling them about. The only other known way is to at least temporary halt death is what we saw in Final Destination 5, where if you take someone's life, you gain however many years that they had left. This instantly inspired the two idiot brothers, Eric and Bobby, to try something. At first, they even think about killing a baby. Yeah, thankfully, they don't go through with that idea. But then they have another idea. This is both kind of brilliant, but also monumentally stupid. Remember I said Bobby had a nut allergy? Well, they are in a hospital, so why not have Bobby eresis, go into shock, die, and then get brought back to life by the myriad of doctors and nurses on staff. This all goes to shit though, starting with the vending machine not giving up the candy, which Eric tries to forcibly get it out, almost crushing Bobby with the machine itself, and then breaking the spring loader inside. But alas, success, they have the candy. They then duck into a room across the hall which just happens to house the state-of-the-art MRI machine. Since Eric has to make sure he's got what he needs to bring Bobby back to life, he goes off on a quick adventure, leaving Bobby behind, who somehow doesn't just leave the room after the MRI machine just turns on by itself and begins to power up its very big magnet. Can you see where we're going with this now? Long story short, Eric returns, Bobby eats the candy, but the machine goes into overdrive. Before Eric can administrate the EpiPen, all his piercings get yanked out, including one in his very sensitive area, if you know what I mean. And then the wheelchair gets pulled in, colliding with Eric and slamming into the MRI and folding him in half like a taco, or like Bouch in the original 90s It movie. Bobby, blowing up like a pufferfish, manages to crawl over to his now dead brother, grab the EpiPen and inject himself in the nick of time. But because he didn't die and then get resurrected, when a nurse opens a door, the broken spring from the vending machine gets pulled by the MRI magnet at full velocity, sending it spiraling through Bobby's dome. A twoffer. So now we're down to just Darlene, Stephanie and Charlie, the youngest and last on Death's list. And where is the safest place again? Well, Grandma's house, of course. And since Darlene is next, she tries to win Mom of the Year by saying she'll just shack up there for as long as life lets her, so her kids can be safe. Great plan, but not really. That house is a death trap, and pretty much the moment they arrive, they do all the dumbest things. I mean, the house is surrounded by dead trees and dead leaves, and the electrical fuse box on the roof is sparking like mad. For as aware as the signs as Stephanie is, this is clear fire hazard doesn't even register on her radar, and naturally, seconds after opening the door, the house explodes. Mom isn't killed right away, she has just enough time to save her son before getting flattened harder than a pancake. And almost like a homage to the Final Destination 2, Stephanie begins to drown in a big puddle. Just in the nick of time, right as she blacks out, her brother does CPR and brings her back to life. All is saved, they've broken the curse, woohoo! A week or two later, it's prom, and Stephanie's little brother is about to have his big night and gets ready to go and pick his date up. Charlie is basically a hero, having saved Stephanie like that, bringing her back from the dead. Or did he? According to Charlie's date's dad, a doctor, she technically didn't die, she just lost consciousness. Oh no. Cue this old lady buying some lemonade, dropping a penny, that penny rolls onto some train tracks, which causes a train to derail at high speed, crashing through a house, coming right for the sibling duo. They haul ass and somehow miraculously manage to outrun this catastrophic wreck on a rampage. But wait, there's more. One of the cars the train was pulling collides with the rear of the train wreckage, hurtling it into the air, and guess what it was carrying? A bunch of freshly chopped down tree logs. A splat here and a splat there. And that's it. With Bloodworth being literally the last on the line and pretty much ready to meet its maker, this would conclude Death's design of all the lives that were never meant to be. As the credits begin to roll, however, we get a glimpse of several other disasters and crazy deaths. Ones we've never seen in any of the films, but are hinted to be the hundreds of other survivors and their descendants from the fateful day, way back in 1967. So that concludes our breakdown and ending explained for Final Destination Bloodlines. What do you think of the film? Did it neatly wrap everything up for you, or do you hope there will be more to this specific timeline of events going forward? Please let us know in the comments below. I've been your host, Sarah. Make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for being here with us today. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your support a lot. I hope you all have a beautiful day and take care.